Amelia Hart stood in her ruined silk wedding dress beside the flooded grain mill, while three men laughed and told the whole town she had trapped the wrong groom. Rain beat her veil flat against her face, thunder shook the roof beams, and the man she was supposed to marry pointed at her like she was a thief instead of a bride. In her gloved hand was a torn letter she had never written. At her feet, the mill wheel groaned, jammed by something hidden beneath the black water. Then a quiet rancher rode out of the storm, saw the shame they had dressed her in, and made a choice that would cost him more than his name. Before we begin, let me know where you are watching from. Leave your country name in the comments below. And if you love stories about courage, loyalty, and community, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next stories. The storm came down hard over Mercy Creek, turning the wagon road into brown soup and making the wheat fields bow like frightened people. It was the kind of rain that could wash a grave clean, the kind that made horses refuse the bit and lantern flames tremble behind glass. Amelia Hart should have been standing under a white canvas wedding tent behind the church, holding orange blossoms and listening to the bell ring. Instead, she was outside the grain mill at the edge of town, her ivory silk dress splashed with mud to the knees, her veil torn loose on one side, and her future breaking apart in front of everyone who mattered. The mill stood by the creek with its big wheel half buried in rushing water. Every few seconds, the wheel jerked and groaned, then stopped again, as if something caught inside it would not let go. Sacks of wheat were stacked under the awning. Men had dragged them back from the wet, cursing the weather and glancing at Amelia like she was another piece of damaged property. Wade Carver, the groom who had sent for her from St. Louis, stood on the mill porch in a black wedding coat with rain shining on his shoulders. He had handsome features that looked generous from a distance and cruel up close. In his hand he held a letter, torn at one corner and stained with mill grease. "She came here before the ceremony," Wade said, loud enough for the mill workers, the church ladies, and half the town to hear. "She was meeting Silas Pike, my own bride, dressed in silk I paid for, sneaking to the mill with another man." A gasp passed through the women under the awning. Someone whispered Amelia's name like it tasted sour. Amelia's throat tightened, but she kept her chin lifted. "That is a lie." Wade smiled as if she had done exactly what he expected. "Then, why is your trunk missing the money my mother gave you? Why is this letter in your hand? Why did Pike run when we came?" Amelia looked down at the torn paper he had forced into her fingers. The handwriting was made to resemble hers, but the loops were too round, the lines too heavy. It said she would meet Silas before the wedding and leave with him after the vows. It mentioned money. It mentioned shame. It mentioned things a decent woman could not explain without making the room even darker. "I never wrote this," she said. Mrs. Carver, Wade's mother, stood beneath a black umbrella near the mill steps, her lips pressed thin. No guilty woman ever writes her own confession in a clean hand. The words struck harder than the rain. Amelia had come west with one good trunk, 2 dresses, and a promise that marriage to Wade Carver would save her younger brother's farm from debt. She had not come for romance at first. She had been honest about that. But she had hoped kindness might grow. She had hoped a new town might give her a new name, one not tied to creditors, sick rooms, and the quiet panic of a family losing everything piece by piece. Now the whole town looked at her as if her name had already been taken away. Silas Pike, the mill foreman, was nowhere in sight. He'd been the one who had sent a boy to the church with a message that Amelia must come at once, that there was urgent trouble concerning her brother's grain note. She had followed because the note was the reason she had agreed to the wedding. She had believed the matter private. She had believed she could handle it before the ceremony. Instead, Wade and his friends had arrived with witnesses. A hard gust came over the creek. One of the lanterns under the awning blew out. The mill wheel gave a long wooden shriek. "Enough," Wade said. "The wedding is finished. The arrangement is finished. Let her find shelter with Pike. If she can find him, The church bell rang once in the distance, lonely and useless. Amelia turned toward town, but no one moved to help her. The rain had soaked through her silk sleeves. Her shoes were sinking into mud. A woman she had shared tea with the day before looked away. A man from the livery spat near the road. Then the mill wheel cracked. It was not loud at first. It sounded like a rifle stock splitting in the coal. Then came a deeper groan from beneath the creek water. A black shape rolled against the wheel, jammed between the paddles, and the current forced the whole structure sideways. Back! A worker shouted. People scattered, but Amelia's skirt caught on a broken iron hook near the loading platform. She pulled once, twice. The wet silk tightened around her legs. The creek surged up over the bank, brown and full of branches. Wade saw her. Their eyes met. For one breath, Amelia thought he might step down. He did not. He backed away and grabbed his mother's arm. The wheel lurched. The platform tilted. Amelia fell to one knee, her gloved hands sliding in mud. The torn letter plastered beneath her palm. A horse screamed somewhere beyond the rain. Then a rider came hard off the west road, leaning low over a gray gelding, his hat rimmed streaming water. He did not shout. He did not ask what had happened. He saw Amelia pinned by the silk, saw the wheel ready to tear loose, and rode straight toward the platform. The gray horse skidded in the mud. The rider swung down before it fully stopped. He was tall, broad in the shoulders, wearing an old brown coat patched at one elbow. His face was weathered in the way of men who did not spend their lives indoors. He drew a knife from his belt and dropped beside Amelia. "Hold still," he said. His voice was quiet, steady, almost gentle. "My dress is caught," she said, hating the tremble in her voice. "I see it." The blade flashed. He cut through the silk without hesitation. The sound of it tearing made one of the church ladies cry out, as if the dress were more alive than the woman inside it. The rider wrapped one arm around Amelia's waist and pulled her up just as the loading platform gave way. A section of boards dropped into the rushing creek. The mill wheel tore free with a roar and spun half a turn before lodging crooked against the stones. Water exploded over them. Amelia clung to the stranger's coat. For one wild moment, she could feel his heartbeat under her cheek. He smelled of horse, rain, leather, and wood smoke. He lifted her clear of the platform and carried her through the mud toward the road. No one spoke. Even Wade watched in silence. Only when the rider set Amelia beside his gray horse did Wade step forward. "Rowan," he called. "That woman is none of your concern." The rider turned. So this was Caleb Rowan. Amelia knew the name, though she had never spoken to him. He owned a small spread northwest of town and trained horses for the stage line. People called him quiet, stubborn, and unlucky. Some said he had once had a wife. Some said he had lost her because he trusted the wrong road in a storm. Caleb looked that way without removing his hand from Amelia's arm. "Any woman about to be drowned is my concern," he said. Wade's smile returned, colder this time. "Careful. She has a habit of making men look foolish." Caleb's eyes moved to the torn letter in Amelia's mud-streaked hand, then to the crowd, then back to Wade. "Seems to me men can manage that on their own." A few workers shifted their feet. One almost laughed, then swallowed it. Wade's face reddened. "You do not know what she is?" "No," Caleb said. "But I know what I just saw." He took off his coat and placed it around Amelia's shoulders. It was heavy, wet on the outside but warm inside. She wanted to refuse it out of pride. She could not. Her teeth were chattering too hard. "I can walk," she said. "I believe you." Caleb kept his voice low enough that only she could hear. "But the road to town is flooding, and you are shaking. I have nowhere to go." His expression changed, not with pity, but with recognition, as if that sentence had once belonged to him. "My ranch is closer than the hotel," he said. "You can warm yourself there until this rain lets up." Behind them, Mrs. Carver made a sound of outrage. "You would take her under your roof?" Caleb looked back once. Better than leaving her under yours. He helped Amelia onto the gray horse, then took the reins and began walking beside her through the storm. No one followed. The church bell did not ring again. The wedding tents sagged in the rain behind the town, empty as a promise nobody meant to keep. The road to Caleb Rowan's place ran along the creek for half a mile, then climbed toward open prairie where the grass bent silver under the weather. Amelia sat side a saddle because her torn dress left her no choice. Every step made the horse's muscles shift beneath her. Every breath hurt. She did not cry. She had learned not to cry in rooms where people were waiting to use tears against her. Caleb did not ask questions for a long time. They passed a stand of cottonwoods rattling in the wind. Beyond them, the town blurred behind sheets of rain. Smoke from chimneys flattened under the storm. The grain mill vanished first, then the church steeple, then Wade Carver and all his witnesses. At last Caleb said, "Were you meeting Pike?" "No." He nodded once. "That is all?" she asked, sharper than she meant. "That is all I asked. I was sent a message about my brother's death." Silas Pike claimed the gray note was being changed. If Wade held that note after the wedding, he would control my brother's farm. I thought. She stopped because the word sounded foolish now. I thought I had to see the paper before I took vows. Caleb walked on, boots sinking into the road. "You thought right," he said. Amelia looked down at him. Rain ran from his hat brim, hiding his eyes. Everyone else thought I was sneaking away with a mill foreman. Everyone else was not pinned under a wheel. The simplicity of it almost broke her. By the time they reached the Rowan ranch, the sky had darkened, though it was not yet evening. The house sat low against the wind, built of timber and fieldstone, with a porch across the front, and a barn set a little downhill. A lantern burned in the barn window. Horses stamped and nickered inside. Caleb helped Amelia down. Her shoes nearly gave out beneath her, but she caught herself on the saddle. He pretended not to notice. Inside the house, the air smelled of coffee, pine, and old ashes. It was plain but clean. A braided rug lay before the hearth. A rifle hung above the mantel. There were 2 chairs at the table, though only one looked used. Caleb moved quickly, building the fire, setting water to heat, pulling a folded blanket from a chest. "My sister's dress might fit," he said. "She left some things here after she married over in Cedar Bluffs. I cannot take. You can take dry cloth when you are half frozen." He handed her a faded blue work dress and pointed toward a small room behind a curtain. "No lock. I will be outside tending the horse." That small courtesy, spoken without ceremony, steadied her more than the fire. When Amelia emerged, the blue dress hung loose in the shoulders and short at the wrists. Her ruined silk lay folded over one arm, heavy with creek water and mud. The torn place where Caleb had cut it gaped along the skirt. A dress made for a wedding had become a rag before sunset. Caleb came back in carrying a tin cup of coffee. He had removed his hat, and she saw a scar at his temple, pale against his dark hair. "You should drink," he said. She took the cup. "Thank you." He nodded and went to the stove, giving her space by the fire. He moved like a man used to silence and to doing things himself. The quiet stretched between them. At last Amelia said, "You did not ask why I agreed to marry Wade Carver." Caleb took a skillet from a hook. "Did you want me to?" "No, but everyone will." "I am not everyone." She watched him cut slices from a loaf of bread. "That sounds lonely." His hand paused. Outside, thunder rolled away toward the east. Caleb set the bread in the skillet. "Sometimes it is." The answer was plain, and because it was plain, Amelia did not know what to do with it. She drank the coffee. It burned her tongue and brought feeling back to her fingers. Through the rain-streaked window, she could see the barn lantern, glowing soft as a small moon. Horses shifted in the stalls somewhere far off. A train whistle blew, thin, and mournful across the wet prairie. I had a mother who believed silk could protect a woman, Amelia said suddenly. She did not know why she spoke. Maybe because Caleb's silence did not pull at her secrets. It let them come out on their own. She said if you dressed like you belonged somewhere, people might open the door before they asked whether you had the right. Caleb turned the bread. Did it work? Sometimes, for a while. And today, Amelia looked at the ruined dress beside the hearth. Today it gave them something bright to drag through the mud. Caleb's face tightened, but he did not offer one of those easy comforts people used when they were eager to stop listening. My wife had a red shawl, he said after a while. She wore it the day we came here. Thought I'd made the place look less empty. Amelia still. He set the plate of toasted bread on the table. She died 5 winters ago. Fever took her before the doctor came. Road was washed out, and I chose the crossing that looked fastest. Team bogged down. Lost half a day. He said it without drama, but every word carried weight from being held too long. I am sorry, Amelia said. Caleb looked toward the window. Folks said the fever would have taken her anyway. I never knew whether they said it for me or themselves. Now Amelia understood the way he had looked at her when she said she had nowhere to go. He knew what it was to stand in a storm and watch a life close its door. The rain beat softly on the roof. The house felt too small for 2 people carrying that much damage. Before either of them could speak again, hooves sounded outside. Caleb crossed to the window. 3 riders came up the yard, lanterns swinging from their saddles. Wade Carver rode in front. Caleb's jaw set. Stay by the fire. Amelia stood anyway. The riders stopped before the porch. Wade did not dismount. His wedding coat was gone. He wore a dark slicker now, and his expression had the polished calm of a man preparing a public performance. Rowan, Wade called. Send her out. Caleb opened the door but remained inside the threshold. No, she is wanted for questioning. By whom? By the sheriff soon enough. Then, let the sheriff come. Wade leaned forward in the saddle. She took money from my mother's room. She came to the mill with a letter making plans to run. She has no family here, no husband, and no standing. You take her in. You take in what follows. Caleb's voice stayed even. Rain is following plenty already. One of Wade's riders, a thick-necked man named Bram Lott, laughed. You always did like lost causes, Rowan. Caleb stepped onto the porch. And you always did need 2 men behind you to feel brave. The laughter stopped. Amelia came to the doorway before Caleb could stop her. She was still in the borrowed blue dress, her hair loose and damp down her back. She looked nothing like a bride now. Might be that was why Wade's face sharpened. He had wanted the town to remember her in ruined silk. He did not like seeing her look human. I stole nothing, she said. Wade held up the torn letter, or what remained of it. Your own words say otherwise. You know I did not write them. Prove it. The challenge hung in the wet air. Amelia had no proof. The boy who brought the message had disappeared. Silas Pike had fled. The gray note was gone. Her trunk was back at the hotel. If Wade had not already had it searched, her word had no weight beside his money, his mother's position, and the town's hunger for a scandal on a rainy day. Caleb looked from Amelia to Wade. She can prove nothing tonight. Wade smiled. Then, you admit it? No, Caleb said. I admit a man, pressing a woman in the dark during a flood, has something he does not want seen by daylight. Bram Lott's hand moved toward his coat. Caleb did not move, but the air changed. Amelia saw then that his quiet was not weakness. It was a fence built around something dangerous. Wade noticed too. He lifted one hand, stopping Bram. This is not over, Wade said. No, Caleb answered. It is not. The riders turned and went back down the road, their lanterns bobbing like angry fireflies. When Caleb closed the door, Amelia realized her hands were shaking again. I should leave, she said. If I stay, they will make you part of it. They already have. That is exactly why I should leave. He looked at her, and for the first time she saw impatience in him. Not anger at her, but at the old habit behind her words. Leaving in a storm with no horse and no coat is not courage, he said. It is surrender dressed up clean. The words cut because they were true. Amelia sank into the chair. I do not know how to fight men like Wade Carver. Cherise took the coffee pot from the stove and poured another cup. You start by sleeping, then eating, then telling the truth the same way each time until lies get tired. That sounds slow, most honest work. He set the cup before her. Their fingers nearly touched. Neither moved for a moment. Outside, the storm kept Mercy Creek awake all night. By morning, the rain had thinned to a gray mist. The ranch yard was soaked. The trough overflowed and the prairie steamed where the sun tried to break through. Amelia woke in the chair by the hearth with a blanket over her shoulders and the taste of smoke in her mouth. Caleb was already outside. She found him in the barn, rubbing down a bay mare whose left hind leg was swollen. He glanced up when Amelia stepped through the doorway. You should still be resting. I have rested as much as I can stand. He almost smiled. Then hold this. He handed her a clean strip of cloth and showed her how to wrap the mare's leg. His hands were patient, never hurrying the animal, never showing off. Amelia had been around carriage horses in St. Louis, glossy things that tossed their heads outside brick houses. Ranch horses were different. They watched people as if judging whether a soul could be trusted. The mare flinched. Amelia softened her voice. Easy, girl. I know. Everyone keeps touching the hurt part and expecting you to be grateful. Caleb looked at her over the horse's back. What? She asked. Nothing. But there was something in his eyes that had not been there the day before. After the mare was wrapped, Amelia helped carry feed, then swept water from the barn floor. The borrowed dress was too loose, so she tied an old apron around her waist. Her hands blistered by noon. She did not complain. Caleb noticed anyway. You were not raised to this work, he said. I was raised to work that could be hidden, mending accounts, nursing my mother, keeping creditors in the parlor while my father climbed out the back window. Caleb poured oats into a bin. Your father ran. From shame mostly, then from death, then from life. She took a breath. After he died, the debt found my brother. Wade offered to buy the note if I married him, and you said yes? I said yes because my brother has 2 children and soil worth saving. She looked at the barn floor. Do you think less of me? No, you did not even pause. A person can marry for hope, money, land, loneliness, or love. Only thing that matters is whether they tell the truth about it. She studied him. Did you marry for love? Yes. The word was quiet, but it filled the barn. Amelia did not ask more. Some doors should not be forced open simply because a person had shown you where they were. Near midday, a boy rode up from town with a bundle tied in oilcloth. He was no more than 12, freckled and nervous with his cap pulled low. Miss Hart, he asked. Amelia stepped forward. Yes, he swallowed. Hotel lady said I was to bring this. Your trunk's been put out. Mrs. Carver says she ain't paying the room no more. Caleb took the bundle before the boy dropped it. Where is the trunk? It's on the hotel porch. Amelia closed her eyes. The boy looked miserable. There's talk, ma'am. I don't hold with all of it. Amelia opened her eyes. What is your name? Tommy Bell. Tommy, did you bring a message to the church yesterday? One saying, Silas Pike needed me at the mill. His face drained of color. Caleb saw it. Speak plain, son. Tommy twisted his cap. I brought a note, but it weren't from Mr. Pike. Mr. Lott gave it to me. Said it was wedding business, and I did a nickel. I didn't know it would cause trouble. Amelia's breath caught. Can you tell that to the sheriff? Caleb asked. Tommy backed away. No, sir. Bram Lott said if I talked, My pa would lose his team contract. Caleb's expression darkened. Amelia knelt so she was closer to the boy's height. You did wrong, Tommy, but you are not the one who set the trap. His eyes shone. I'm sorry, miss. I believe you. That seemed to hurt him more than if she had struck him. After he rode off, Caleb stood in the barn doorway, watching the boy disappear down the road. There is the first loose board, he said, but not enough. No, not enough. Amelia untied the oilcloth bundle. Inside were a few garments, her hairbrush, her mother's small Bible, and a pair of gloves. No money, no gray note, no letters from her brother. They took everything that could help me, she said. Maybe not everything. Caleb crossed to a shelf and picked up the torn piece of silk he had cut from her dress. It had dried stiff with mud. Something dark clung to the hem. What is that? Amelia asked. He held it near the light. Mill grease. But look here. Pressed into the silk where it had snagged under the platform was a smear of black ink and a few reversed letters. Amelia frowned. From a paper. Something was caught under that platform with you. The mill wheel. Oh, what jammed it? They rode to the mill that afternoon. The creek had dropped, leaving mud, broken boards, and weeds tangled around the damaged wheel. The air smelled of wet rain, which had already begun to sour. No one was working. A crow sat on the roof beam and complained at the sky. Caleb tied the horses near the road. Stay where the ground is firm. Amelia lifted her skirt and followed anyway. He gave her a look. I said, I do not know how to fight men like Wade, she said. I did not say I know how to stand safely aside. This time he did smile, just a little. They searched beneath the loading platform. Caleb pried up boards while Amelia held the lantern, though the day was not yet dark. Beneath a wedge of broken timber near the wheel trough, Caleb found a metal cash box twisted nearly flat by the mill mechanism. The lock had snapped open. Inside was wet paper. Amelia's pulse beat hard in her throat. Caleb carried the box to a dry patch beneath the awning, and together they laid the papers carefully across grain sacks. Some were ruined beyond reading. Others had only blurred at the edges. One page showed lists of farmer names and bushels sold. Another showed payments marked short. At the bottom of the third page was her brother's name, Daniel Hart. Beside it, in clear ink, was a notation that the debt had been paid through the summer wheat delivery. Amelia pressed one hand to her mouth. My brother's farm was not in danger, she whispered. Caleb read the next page, his face hardening. Carver and Pike were buying grain under one measure and selling it under another, shorting farmers, then using false debt notes to take land. Wade wanted my brother's land. Where is it? East of the new county road survey. Caleb looked up sharply. What? She asked. The railroad spur is coming through that way. The county approves the north road. Land along it will triple. The words settled between them. The marriage had never been about saving Amelia. It had been about owning the land her brother did not even know was valuable. A board creaked behind them. Bram Lott stepped from the mill office holding a shotgun. Well, he said, ain't this touching? Caleb moved slightly in front of Amelia. Bram looked at the papers. Mr. Carver said you might come sniffing. Then Mr. Carver should have come himself, Caleb said. He does not dirty his hands when mine will do. Amelia's fear rose, but beneath it came something steadier. Anger, clean and bright. That cash box proves what he did, she said. Bram grinned. Wet paper proves nothing after it burns. He lifted the shotgun. Caleb moved fast. He kicked a loose sack of grain into Bram's knees and shoved Amelia behind the stacked wheat. The shot went off, blasting a hole through the awning roof. Horses screamed outside. Caleb lunged. Bram swung the gun like a club. It caught Caleb across the ribs. He stumbled but drove his shoulder into Bram, sending both men crashing into the mill door. Amelia grabbed the cash box and papers. A lantern hung nearby, unlit. Beside it lay a long iron hook used for dragging sacks. She took it in both hands. Bram threw Caleb against the wall and reached for the shotgun. Amelia struck his wrist with the hook. Bram howled. The gun dropped. Caleb caught him by the coat and hit him once, hard enough to end the matter. Bram fell to one knee, then sideways into the mud. Caleb leaned against the wall, breathing through his teeth. "You are hurt," Amelia said. "So is he." "That is not an answer." "It is the one I have." She helped him gather the papers. His face had gone pale beneath the weathering, but he did not stop until the cash box was wrapped in a saddle blanket and tied behind Amelia's horse. As they mounted, Bram groaned in the mud. Amelia looked back. "Should we leave him?" Caleb considered. "No." He took Bram's horse by the reins and tied it near him, close enough that the man could crawl to it when he woke. Amelia watched him. "After he tried to shoot us, a man can answer for his crimes without drowning in mud first." There it was again. The difference between revenge and justice. She had not seen it clearly in many men. They rode away from the mill with the wet ledger wrapped between them, and a storm of a different kind gathering behind. By evening, Mercy Creek knew Caleb Rowan had struck Bram Lott at the mill and ridden off with stolen property. That was how Wade told it from the hotel porch, one arm in a sling he had not needed in the morning. His mother weeping into a handkerchief for the benefit of witnesses. Amelia and Caleb reached the ranch before the sheriff came, but not by much. Sheriff Darden was an old man with tired eyes and a badge polished brighter than his conscience. He arrived with Wade, Mrs. Carver, and 2 town councilmen. Tommy Bell's father drove the wagon, looking as if he wished himself buried under it. Caleb had changed into a clean shirt, though the bruising along his ribs made every breath stiff. Amelia had spread the wet ledger pages near the stove to dry, winged the corners with cups and horseshoe nails. When the knock came, Caleb opened the door. Sheriff Darden looked past him at the table. "I am here for Miss Hart." "On what charge?" Caleb asked. "Theft, public indecency, causing a disturbance at the mill. Might be assault, depending on how Mr. Lott wakes up." Amelia stepped forward. "Bram Lott fired a shotgun at us." Wade gave her a pitying look. "You see how quickly she invents danger." Caleb reached for the ledger page with Daniel Hart's name. "Read this." The sheriff did not take it. One of the councilmen did. His eyes moved over the page. Then he frowned. "This is mill accounting." Wade laughed softly. "Waterlogged scraps stolen from my property." "Your property?" Amelia asked. "I thought Silas Pike ran the mill." Wade's smile flickered. Caleb saw it too. Mrs. Carver snapped. "My son invested in several honest ventures. That is no crime." "No," Caleb said. "But cheating farmers is." The sheriff rubbed his jaw. "These papers need review." "By whom?" Amelia asked. "The men named in them." The room went still. Wade stepped inside without invitation. "You listen to me, Amelia. This has gone far enough. You have been frightened and misled by a bitter man who hates this town because it could not save his wife." Caleb's face closed. Amelia felt the words strike him. She saw it in the small tightening around his eyes, the way his hand curled once at his side. Wade turned that wound like a knife. He wants someone to rescue because he failed before. Amelia moved before she thought. She stepped between them. "Do not speak of his wife to hide what you did to me." Wade's expression hardened. "You still think you can come back from this?" "No," Amelia said. "I think the woman you tried to bury at the mill is gone." For one breath, Wade seemed uncertain. Then he leaned close enough that only she and Caleb could hear. "Your brother's land will be mine by winter, and when I am done, every road out of this county will know what kind of bride you were." Caleb took one step forward. Amelia touched his arm, stopping him. She wanted Caleb to strike Wade. She wanted it badly enough to frighten herself, but a blow would give Wade exactly what he needed. The sheriff cleared his throat. "Miss Hart, you will come to town until this matter is settled. No, Caleb said. The sheriff sighed. Do not make me do this. I am not. Amelia looked at the ledger pages, then at Caleb's bruised side, then out the window toward the road. The sky had cleared, and a thin moon hung above the barn. She understood then what choice stood before her. If she stayed behind Caleb's door, Wade would turn him into a criminal sheltering a fallen woman. If she went with the sheriff, Wade might bury the papers, frighten Tommy, and send word to her brother before she could act. If she ran, every lie would harden in her absence. So Amelia lifted her chin. I will go to town, she said. Caleb turned. Amelia, but not as a prisoner. I will stand before the council in the church tomorrow morning with these papers read aloud. If Sheriff Darden refuses, I will take them to the county seat myself. Wade scoffed. In what? Rowan's charity wagon. No, Amelia said. On my own 2 feet, if I must. Caleb looked at her for a long moment. Something passed between them that was not confession, not yet, but understanding sharpened by danger. Then he said, the south road to the county seat is washed out. North road might hold if we leave before dawn. Wade's head snapped toward him. That was how Amelia knew the north road mattered. The sheriff frowned. Nobody asked you to ride anywhere. Caleb ignored him. County clerk opens at 9. If those records are filed, they cannot disappear. Mrs. Carver's voice rose. This is madness. No, Amelia said. Madness was thinking silk made me safe. She gathered the ledger pages, folded them between sheets of dry cloth, and placed them inside her mother's Bible. Wade watched every movement. Caleb saw him watching. That night, Amelia slept in the spare room while Caleb sat by the door with a rifle across his knees. Neither said what they both knew. Wade would not let those papers reach the county seat. Before dawn, the world was cold and silver. Mist lay low over the prairie. The storm had left puddles shining in every rut. Caleb hitched a strong chestnut team to the buckboard while Amelia packed the ledger, bread, coffee, and strips torn from the ruined silk dress. He saw the silk in her hand. You kept it. I thought I might need bandages. His gaze softened. Your mother would object. My mother survived worse than mud. She would understand. They took the north road as the first light opened behind the hills. Caleb drove with one hand tight on the reins, the other pressed now and then against his ribs. Amelia sat beside him wearing the borrowed blue dress, Caleb's coat, and a hat that dipped too low over her eyes. For a while, they said little. The road climbed through open grassland where meadowlarks called from fence posts and rainwater flashed in the wagon tracks. Behind them, Mercy Creek shrank into a cluster of roofs and smoke. Ahead, the county road curved toward a narrow pass where red bluffs rose on either side. Caleb kept glancing at the ground. What are you looking for? Amelia asked. Fresh tracks, Dio. You expect them. Yeah, you expect them. Ah? He looked at her. Still time to turn back? No, I did not think so. They reached the pass an hour later. The road narrowed between stone walls, still wet from the storm. Halfway through, a cottonwood had fallen across the track. Caleb stopped the team. Amelia's heart began to pound. The tree had not fallen naturally. Its cut was clean. Stay down, Caleb said. A rifle cracked from the bluff. The horses reared. Caleb hauled the reins tight, keeping the wagon from tipping. Another shot struck the wagon side, splintering wood near Amelia's knee. She dropped low, clutching the Bible beneath her coat. Men shouted from above. Caleb snapped the reins and turned the team hard toward a shallow wash beside the road. The wagon bounced so violently Amelia nearly fell. He drove straight through brush and standing water while shots broke around them. One horse screamed and stumbled. Caleb threw his weight on the brake. The wagon lurched to a stop. The left horse had been grazed high along the shoulder, blood bright against chestnut hair. Amelia was out before Caleb could stop her. Get back, he shouted, but she had already taken the silk strips from her satchel. The wounded horse trembled, eyes rolling. Amelia pressed her cheek bravely to its neck. I know, she whispered. I know they hurt you because you were carrying someone else. Caleb stood guard with the rifle while she wrapped the wound with the torn silk. The cloth bloomed red but hell. From the bluff came Ram Lot's voice, rough and angry. Give us the book, Rowan, and ride away. Caleb looked at Amelia. She tied the knot with shaking fingers. Can the horse move? My babe. Then we move. There are 3 men up there, and 2 down here who are right. It was a foolish thing to say in the face of rifles. It was also the only thing that kept fear from taking her knees. Caleb's mouth curved, not quite a smile. Hold tight. He fired once toward the bluff, not to hit, but to make the men duck. Then he climbed onto the wagon, snapped the reins, and drove down the wash. The injured horse pulled unevenly, but bravely. Amelia braced herself against the seat, one hand on the Bible, one on the rail. The wash emptied near an old freight trail. Caleb knew from his days hauling horses. It ran longer than the main road but avoided the pass. For 3 miles they heard riders behind them, sometimes close, sometimes fading. The prairie opened around them, gold under the clearing sky. At a fork near a burned-out stage station, Caleb stopped. What are you doing? Amelia asked. Changing the odds. He unhitched the injured horse and tied it in the shade with water and feed. Then he cut the team down to 1 horse and removed the wagon's sideboard with quick, painful movements. You cannot drive with 1 horse all the way, Amelia said. We do not need all the way. He pointed toward a low ridge. Beyond that is the old road crew camped. There should be a handcart and maybe a mule if Henderson still keeps supplies there. Henderson, man who owes me money and hates Wade Carver. That sounds useful. Sometimes a man's enemies are the closest thing he has to references. They left the wagon hidden near cottonwoods and continued with the single horse until the ground grew too rough. Caleb's breathing had worsened. Twice Amelia saw him press his ribs and look away before she could speak. At the abandoned road camp, they found no mule, but they found a 2-wheel cart and a shed full of tools. On the wall hung a faded county notice about the proposed North Road. Caleb took it down and studied the survey marks. This road would run past your brother's farm, he said, then through Carver's leased grazing lots and Pike's mill yard. Wade wanted the mill, the road, and the land, and he needed your marriage to make part of it clean. Amelia stared at the notice. Her anger had become something colder now. He did not just shame me. He used the town to do it. Yes, sir, I keep thinking of those women under the awning, the way they looked at me. Caleb folded the notice and placed it with the ledger. People like a story that tells them who to blame before supper. Did you blame them when your wife died? He was quiet long enough that she thought he would not answer. Then he said, I blame the doctor, the rain, the road, God, myself, and every man who told me to be sensible afterward. And now, I still blame myself on bad nights. Amelia stepped closer. Caleb, he shook his head. Do not make a saint of me because I helped you. I spent 5 years letting this town think I was made of stone because it was easier than admitting I was still angry. I do not need you to be a saint. What do you need? The question was too honest for the dusty little shed, too close for 2 people with danger still behind them. Amelia looked at the ledger in her hands. I need to reach the county seat. He nodded, but something in his eyes told her he had heard the other answer she was not ready to give. They pushed on. By late afternoon, Caleb could barely stand straight. Amelia insisted he ride in the cart while she walked beside the horse. He refused until he nearly fell. Then pride lost to pain. The sight would have been funny in another life. A silk-dressed bride without silk, leading a tired horse along a freight road, while a stubborn rancher sat in a cart, looking offended by his own rescue. You are scowling, Amelia said. I am thinking, You scowl when you think. I scowl when I am being hauled like a sack of flour. You rescued me from a grain mill. It seems fair. Despite himself, Caleb laughed. It was low and brief, but it changed his whole face. Amelia felt the sound settle somewhere inside her. Then hoofbeats came behind them. Wade Carver rode over the ridge with Bram Lott and another man. Dust rose around them, bright in the slanting sun. Caleb reached for the rifle, but Amelia put a hand on it. No, they will take the papers, not if they're not with us. Caleb stared at her. Amelia pulled the Bible from her satchel, removed the ledger pages and county notice, and wrapped them in oilcloth. Then she looked toward a line of fence posts leading to a small cemetery on the hill. At the gate stood a mail marker for riders on the county route. Nishi chair, no teenager. She asked, how long? As long as it takes me to run. He looked at the riders, then at her. Amelia, if they catch you, they already caught me once. This time I know who they are. Before he could stop her, she ran. Her boots slipped in the mud. The borrowed dress caught on weeds. She heard Wade shout, heard Caleb fire into the air, heard horses split direction behind her. The cemetery gate seemed impossibly far. The wind tore at her hat and sent it tumbling away. She clutched the oilcloth bundle beneath her coat and ran harder than she had ever run in her life. At the gate, she saw the mailbox nailed beneath the route marker. It was for county dispatch riders, iron-latched and weatherproof. Caleb must have known it was there. Maybe that was why he had taken this road. She shoved the bundle inside, slammed the latch, and pulled the little red flag up. A rider came behind her. Not Wade, Bram. He leapt from his horse and grabbed her arm so hard. Pain flashed white up to her shoulder. You ruined everything, he snarled. Amelia twisted, but he held tight. Then Caleb's voice came from the road. Let her go. He stood 30 yards away, one arm wrapped around his ribs, rifle raised. Wade sat on his horse between them, his own pistol pointed at Caleb. For a moment, nobody moved. Wade's face was no longer handsome. Sweat streaked the dust on his cheeks. The papers, Amelia. She looked at him across the cemetery stones. Gone. His eyes flicked to the mail marker. Caleb saw it. So did Bram. Wade's voice turned soft. You stupid woman. Do you know what happens now? Yes, Amelia said. Someone outside Mercy Creek reads the truth. Wade cocked the pistol. Amelia stopped breathing. Caleb lowered his rifle. The sacrifice happened so quietly she almost did not understand it. Caleb set the gun on the ground, then stood empty-handed in the road. Let her walk and I will say I stole the ledger. I will say she knew nothing. You can hang the theft on me and keep your story about her if you need it. Amelia's heart lurched. No, Wade considered. He wanted that. She could see it. Caleb Rowan, the town's quiet failure, made into the villain. Amelia spared prison, but left with a stained name. Wade might not get the papers, but he could still poison what they meant. Caleb, no, she said. He did not look at her. Her brother has children. She has done enough running for other people's land. There it was. The thing he was willing to give up. Not just safety. His name. The last hard piece of himself he had kept from the town. Amelia felt something inside her break open. Not in weakness, but in refusal. She looked at the cemetery stones, at the road, at the men who had mistaken dignity for something they could grant or take. Then she reached down and picked up a stone from the mud. Bram laughed. What are you going to do with that? Ring a bell. She threw the stone at the iron mailbox with all the strength she had. The clang rang across the hill, once, twice, as she grabbed another stone and struck it again. The sound carried down the road. Wade swore, stop her. But it was too late. From the far bend came the rattle of wheels and a shout. A county mail wagon appeared, driven by a gray-bearded man with a shotgun across his lap. Beside him sat two road surveyors in canvas coats. The driver pulled up, taking in the scene. Wade's pistol, Caleb unarmed, Bram holding Amelia, the raised mail flag, the ringing iron box. "Well," the old driver said, "this looks official." Bram released Amelia. Wade lowered his pistol slowly, but not before the surveyors saw it. The county men took the ledger papers from the box. They read enough on the roadside to change the day. Wade tried to explain. Then he tried to flatter. Then he tried to accuse Amelia again. But his words no longer had the only chair in the room. The mail driver recognized Bram Lott from a freight robbery warrant in Kansas. One surveyor recognized Silas Pike's name from a complaint filed by farmers 2 counties over. The other knew Sheriff Darden's signature was missing from road filings where it should have been present. Truth, once it found a road, traveled faster than shame. By sunset, Wade Carver and Bram Lott rode back to Mercy Creek under guard, with Caleb and Amelia in the county wagon behind them. Caleb's face had gone gray from pain, and Amelia kept one hand pressed to the bandage at his side. Neither spoke much. They did not need to. Mercy Creek gathered before the church the next morning because scandal had called them louder than the bell. This time Amelia did not stand in ruined silk. She stood in the borrowed blue dress, mended at the sleeve, her hair braided simply down her back. In her hand she held the piece of silk that had bandaged the horse, washed now but still stained faintly red. Caleb stood beside her, bruised and tired, refusing the chair someone brought him. The county clerk read the ledger aloud from the church steps. He read the false weights, the stolen grain, the paid debts marked unpaid, the planned road filings, and Daniel Hart's name clear as daylight. He read enough for farmers to begin shouting. He read enough for Mrs. Carver to sit down hard on the church bench and cover her face. Sheriff Darden removed his badge before anyone asked. Tommy Bell stepped forward with his father beside him and told how Bram Lott had paid him to carry the false message. His voice shook, but he told it. Amelia thanked him in front of everyone, which made the boy cry outright. Then Silas Pike was brought from the depot, caught trying to leave on the morning train with a valise full of cash and contracts. Last came Wade. He stood in the road with his hands bound, looking at Amelia as if she had betrayed him by surviving. "You will regret this," he said. Caleb took one step, but Amelia stopped him with a touch, just as she had before. "No," she said to Wade. "I have regretted fear. I have regretted silence. I have regretted letting men decide what my name was worth. I will not regret the truth." The town heard her. Not all hearts changed at once. They never do. Some people looked ashamed because they were. Some looked away because shame was easier when avoided. But others stepped forward. The liveryman who had spat near the road removed his hat. "Miss Hart, I was wrong. A farmer's wife brought Amelia a shawl. I should have helped you at the mill." Mrs. Whitcomb from the hotel said Amelia's trunk had been returned to a clean room, paid for by the ladies' aid if she wanted it. Amelia looked at the faces that had condemned her 2 days before. Forgiveness did not rise in her like music. It came slower, like a door swollen by rain, needing effort to open. "I will not pretend it did not hurt," she said, "but I will not live inside that hurt either." Caleb looked at her then with something like wonder. The county judge ordered Wade, Bram, and Pike taken to Cedar Bluffs to await trial. As the wagon rolled out, the road crew men standing near the church watched with grim satisfaction. One of them called, "Looks like those boys finally found the road." A ripple passed through the crowd, not quite laughter, not quite relief. Amelia watched the wagon shrink beyond the dust, carrying away the men who had tried to leave her with no future. But a future, she was learning, was not something a man handed you at an altar. Sometimes it was something you pulled from a flood, wrapped in torn cloths, and carried down a dangerous road with your own bleeding hands. 3 weeks later, Mercy Creek changed. The grain mill reopened under new ownership, this time with farmers keeping the accounts on a board where everyone could see. The North Road was approved, but the route was altered. After Caleb spoke before the county, it would not cut Daniel Hart's farm apart. It would pass near enough to bring trade, far enough to leave his fields whole. Amelia wrote to her brother herself. She told him the debt was false. She told him to keep the land. She did not tell him every cruel word spoken at the mill. Some wounds did not need to be mailed. She stayed at the Rowan Ranch while matters settled. Because Mrs. Whitcomb's hotel was too full of apologies and the Carver house was too full of ghosts. At least that was what she told herself. In truth, she stayed because the ranch had work that made sense. Horses needed feeding, whether a woman had been shamed or praised. Bread needed baking. Fences needed checking. The injured chestnut horse healed, and every time Amelia changed the bandage, Caleb said the animal favored her more than him. "You sound jealous," she told him one bright morning. "I trained that horse 2 years. I gave him silk. That would do it." They smiled more easily by then. Romance did not arrive like lightning. It came like morning chores. Caleb teaching Amelia how to read hoof trouble from tracks in soft mud. Amelia showing Caleb how to keep accounts so no man could cheat him in a contract again. Caleb leaving coffee warm for her before sunrise. Amelia mending his old brown coat without asking permission. The two of them standing on the porch after supper, listening to coyotes beyond the pasture and the far train whistle calling through the dark. One evening, Caleb found Amelia at the barn door holding the last clean piece of her wedding silk. She had washed it until it shone ivory again. In the sunset, it looked almost gold. "What will you do with it?" he asked. "I do not know." She ran the silk through her fingers. "For a while I hated it. Then it saved a horse. Then it carried evidence. Now it feels like it belongs to more than one day." Caleb leaned beside the door, careful of his still healing ribs. "Could make a flag for what country?" He looked out over the pasture. "One where people get to start again." The tenderness of it caught her off guard. She folded the silk once, then again. "Caleb, why did you offer to take the blame?" He did not answer quickly. That was one thing she trusted about him. He never rushed the truth. At first, because it was practical, that is not all, no. He looked down at his hands. "Because I knew what it was to have people talk around your pain like you were already gone." After Ruth died, folks meant well, some of them. But they turned her death into a lesson about weather, roads, God's will, anything that kept them from sitting with what happened. "I let them. Then I disappeared while still living here." Amelia listened. "When Wade shamed you, I saw him trying to make you disappear in front of everyone." Caleb's voice lowered. "I could not watch it happen." She looked at him through the soft barn light. "You did more than watch. So did you." The space between them felt quiet and alive. Amelia took a breath. "I was going to marry a man I did not love to save land that was not even lost. I keep wondering what that makes me." Caleb turned toward her. "It makes you someone who carried too much alone." Her eyes stung. "I do not want to be chosen because you pity me," she said. "I do not pity you. I do not want to be rescued like a habit. I do not know what I can offer besides trouble, bad sewing when nervous, and a talent for finding men with ledgers." Caleb smiled. "I need help with ledgers." She laughed despite the tears. Then he grew serious. "Amelia, I am not asking for an answer tonight. I am saying what is true. Somewhere between that mill and the county road, my house stopped feeling empty when I thought of you in it." The words were plain. No poetry, no performance. That was why they reached her. She looked toward the house, the barn, the horses in the last light, the road beyond the pasture. "I used to think home was a place that could be secured by paper, a note paid, a name changed, a ring put on, and now I think it is where the truth can sit at the table without being asked to leave." Caleb's eyes softened. He held out his hand, not to claim, not to pull, only to offer. Amelia placed the folded silk in his palm. "Thin, let us make a flag." They did. On the first clear Sunday of summer, the new road opened. The whole town gathered where the road passed the rebuilt grain mill. Fresh boards gleamed on the loading platform. The wheel turned cleanly in the creek, no longer groaning under hidden weight. Farmers stood with their wagons, women with parasols, children chasing each other through dust. The church bell rang, not for a wedding this time, but for a road that belonged to more than one powerful family. At the edge of the mill yard stood a new sign, painted in careful black letters. Mercy Creek Cooperative, Milda. Above it, tied to a small iron hook, fluttered a narrow strip of ivory silk. Some folks knew what it was, some did not. Amelia did not explain it to everyone. She no longer needed the whole town to understand in order for something to be true. Caleb stood beside her in a clean shirt, his old coat mended at the elbow with stitches small enough that only he could tell where hands had worked. Amelia wore a simple cream dress Mrs. Whitcomb had helped alter, with no veil, no orange blossoms, and no borrowed pride. In her hair was a small comb that had belonged to her mother. Daniel Hart arrived that afternoon with his 2 children in a wagon dusty from travel. When he saw Amelia, he climbed down and held her so tightly she could hardly breathe. He tried to apologize for the debt, for the burden, for not knowing. She stopped him. "We are done letting false debts rule this family," she said. Caleb took the children to see the horses while Amelia and Daniel talked. She watched him lift her niece onto the gray gelding, the same horse that had carried her from the mill. The child laughed, and Caleb laughed with her, easy and unguarded. That sound was the final proof of healing. Not that pain had vanished. It never vanished cleanly, but it no longer owned the whole house. Near sunset, after the speeches ended, and the wagons began rolling home, Amelia walked alone to the creek bank. The water moved bright over the stones. The mill wheel turned steady behind her. Caleb came to stand beside her. "Tired?" he asked. "Ah, yes. Happy?" She considered. "Yes," he nodded, as if happiness were a serious matter deserving thought. From his pocket, he took a small object wrapped in cloth. He opened it and showed her a plain silver ring, not new, but polished until it caught the last light. "It was my mother's," he said. "Not Ruth's. I would not give you a ghost and ask you to call it a promise." Amelia looked at the ring, then at him. "I love you," Caleb said. "Not because you needed saving. Because you kept choosing truth when lies would have been easier. Because you know how to stay. Because when you walk into my barn, even the stubborn horses behave like the world has improved." She smiled through sudden tears. "That is the most romantic thing anyone has ever said of livestock. I have more. I believe you." He held the ring but did not reach for her hand. "Will you build a home with me, Amelia Hart?" Slowly. "Honestly. With room for your brother's children, my bad coffee, your ledgers, and any silk you decide to keep." The creek moved over stone. The road stretched west, gold in the dying sun. Behind them, the town that had shamed her was learning, imperfectly, how to make amends. Before them stood no wedding tent, no bargain, no man holding her future like a document he could sign. Only Caleb, waiting. Amelia held out her hand. "Yes," she said, "but I will handle the accounts." Caleb slid the ring onto her finger. "That is probably wise," she laughed, and he kissed her then, gently, like a man grateful for a door open from the inside. Above the mill sign, the strip of silk lifted in the evening wind. Once it had been part of a dress meant to purchase security. Then it had been dragged through mud, cut by a rancher's knife, tied around a wounded horse, and hidden around the truth. Now it flew over the road where the men who shamed her had been carried away, and over the mill where her future had seemed lost. The train whistle sounded far off, rolling across the prairie. Amelia leaned into Caleb's side and watched the silk shine in the last light. No longer a symbol of ruin, but a small bright banner of everything she had survived, everything she had forgiven, and everything she was finally free to choose.